Hey everybody, it's Ahmed Zahid here. We are live again, once again, here on the Tawla here with me, Ahmed Zahid. I'm going to have some great guests from this wonderful event you see posted on the screen, a conversation with Layla Khalid, talking about academic freedom and the attempts to silence academic freedom at San Francisco State. Let me give everybody a minute or two to catch on. We will start here in a minute, but please go ahead and share this quickly. Get online. We will be talking about this event with Professor Rabab Abdul Hadi and a couple more guests with the event, but I'll give everybody a second or so. Please go ahead, get online, share this quickly, and I'll be back with you all in 1 minute. Hey everybody, I know you can all hear me out there in the world. It's Ahmed Zahid with you. We're going to start in about 60 seconds, just letting people get on. We're going to be talking about the event you see on your screen right now, the attempt to silence academic freedom at San Francisco State. We want to talk about these things. Maybe we'll even take some calls tonight from callers, but please share this, get in there. And of course, this will be available for everyone afterwards as well, but go ahead and share it now and join us here in this important event. We'll get started in 1 minute. All right, hi everybody. Welcome again to my page. Thanks for joining. I'm joining you tonight actually from a cafe here in Dearborn, Michigan. As you can see, I have my hookah out, but I won't be using it tonight. No smoking. We don't want to encourage the young kids to smoke ergile. But tonight we have another very important topic. Hopefully you've been following some of my conversations over the past few weeks. We've talked about the Palestinian community and the elections coming up. Just this past weekend, we had a wonderful event with Professor Rabab Abdul Hadi and Professor Sami Al-Aryan about Zionist normalization in the American Muslim community. And there was actually some news about that I'll share in a minute. But today, we're going to talk also about this event, conversation with Layla Khalid, being put on at San Francisco State University. And there have been numerous attempts to silence this and silence Professor Rabab, as they've tried over the years, and we've always fought back. And we're going to talk about that event tonight. So I'm very happy to bring on with me all of our guests today. We have Professor Rabab Abdul Hadi joining us. We have Professor Tomomi Kinakawa as well joining us from San Francisco State University, and student activist Anais Muhammad from Wellesley also joining us as well. Hello, ladies.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Hey.
We go by women, not ladies.
But I'm sorry. Oh,
it's all right. Yeah,
I'm not as woke as I'm supposed to be, you know.
That's fine. We'll woke you. Yeah.
But Professor Rabab, please tell us quickly again, what is this event about, and what are you guys trying to achieve with this event out at San Francisco State?
Yes, this is actually an open classroom that is co-sponsored by the Ahmed Studies, which is Arab and Muslim Ethnicities and Diaspora Studies program, along with the Women and Gender Studies Department. This is why you see Professor Tomomi Kinakawa and myself. This is a collaboration that we actually have started last semester in the spring, but it's built on a very long time involvement of both of us. We only met each other in November 2019. Professor Kinakawa can speak about that. And we basically wanted to do, Professor Kinakawa is teaching courses in women's studies, and she had invited me to be guest speaker in her classes to talk about gender and sexual justice in Arab and Muslim communities. So we had two webinars in the spring in April, on April 6th and April 8th. And the reason they were webinars is because I was actually supposed to be a guest speaker in the actual classroom, but then we were hit with the pandemic and everything was converted online, so we did it. And so we wanted to, there was a lot of student support and excitement about the events, as well as faculty and members of the community was so well attended. People were so excited. So we decided to continuing this semester and continue the collaboration. So we're bringing our open classrooms. Professor Kinakawa is teaching women and gender studies, 2 classes. Each one has 68 students. I'm teaching actually, unfortunately, 4 classes that I'm not supposed to be teaching, but that's probably another discussion that also has to do with the silencing. And as a result, we're bringing them. So we're having 2 webinars. We're having this webinar tomorrow, which is around question of Palestinian gender, justice, feminism, and resistance, and thinking about what the narratives are and how we can read the narratives. And we can talk more about the details of it. And we have another one in October, on October 19th, actually on queer justice and pinkwashing. So this is part of the 2 continuation of the 2 webinars that we've started last spring. And we're bringing this very amazing guests. We are having the lineup is actually quite exciting. In addition to Layla Khaled, who's a very well-known Palestinian icon, feminist, militant icon, and revolutionary, we also have Rani Kasril, who's an anti-Zionist Jewish long-time activist and struggler with the African National Congress in South Africa, now very active with multiple things, writing and on Palestine. We have Professor Rula Abu Daho, who is the acting director of the Institute for Women's Studies at Birzeit University, which is the most important institute for women's studies throughout the region, in Palestine, the Arab world, and throughout the region. And I say throughout the region, what people might call Middle East, that would include also Israel, would include Turkey, would include Iran. It's the most, everybody knows this institute. We have Laura Whitehorn, who's a Jewish anti-Zionist activist, long-time prison support person who co-founded Releasing Aging People in Prison, who was actually on the 2016 delegation, the first delegation we done on prisoner solidarity between US and Palestine. And last but not least, we have Sekou Odinga, who's a very well-known former Black Panther, long-time Black liberation organizer and activist here in the US. So we really have a great lineup who are coming to do it. And so maybe I can pass it on to, maybe if you want to, like maybe Professor Kinakawa can actually like just add a little bit more about it. We're very excited about it. So,
Sure. So, yeah. So, Professor Kinakawa, I mean, you now have ventured into this Palestinian world, which means, be prepared to be boycotted. But, what is the significance of this to you as someone who works in women's studies and maybe not directly in Palestinian studies over the years, and especially the significance of bringing Layla Khaled? I mean, this is obviously what's causing a lot of the stir. What drew you to all of this, and how does it connect to your greater work?
Yes. So I think I'm, as Professor Abdulhadi mentioned, I'm the one who invited her to my classes last semester. And I teach introductory women and gender studies course. And teaching about Arab American feminism has been always central to the course. And over the years, I've been teaching it since 2015. And I used Professor Abdulhadi's writings many times. Professor Abdulhadi has written many very influential, very foundational literature on that topic. And so it was very, so I always wanted to invite her to my class, but didn't have much courage to do that maybe. But then we actually met at a big Women and Gender Studies conference, National Women Studies Association conference back in November. And as a scholar activist, I work on a different issue, which is Call for Women Justice, and we had a tour for the memorial that we established for the survivors of the Japanese military sex slavery that we founded in San Francisco, and we invited participants of the conference to join us at a memorial. And then at that time, Dr. Abdulhadi joined us and gave a really, really powerful speech. And so that's how I met her. And then the significant, so Leila Khaled, I think in many ways, for me personally, I always wanted to learn more about like the struggles in Palestine, and then so inviting her helped students and myself to learn about your struggles. And Leila Khaled, through Professor Abdulhadi's work, I learned how central and how influential Leila Khaled has been in Palestine, in Arab American feminism. But then by learning that, I'm also realizing that how foundational her work is for widely, like for all of us to do feminism all over the world. And I especially feel very deep connection between my own struggle, although it's very different. I mean, like I'm not saying it's the same, but we are also struggling with state silencing us. And so I'm learning so much from Leila Khaled's life and work. Yes.
Okay. And Anais, you are joining us as a sort of a student voice in this and a student activist, and I know you're out at Wellesley University. What is the importance of getting students involved in these kinds of events, and what do you see your role as making sure that these voices are heard and not silenced in this event?
Yeah, so as a student activist and as a member of a historically women's college, Wellesley College, not university, Wellesley College is a historically women's college, and so supporting academic freedom on Palestine is integral to our existence as a college. But apart from that, I'm also an activist in Students for Justice in Palestine and other more youth-centered movements in America for Palestine, for justice and for Palestine. And when I saw that the event was under attack all over social media from right-wing Zionists, I immediately, not I, but collectively, we as a Wellesley Students for Justice in Palestine collectively mobilized to create a petition in support of academic freedom on Palestine, and specifically hosting Leila Khaled in this webinar because while she is just a part of the webinar, she's an integral part of the webinar, and not to detract from any of the other panelists, but it is really about commemorating her and her role in the in Arab feminism and Palestinian feminism specifically. So as a Palestinian in America, Palestinian American, it's very important. It's integral to our existence to support something like this as women, first and foremost, but also as Palestinians. So I think sort of supporting the student voice in this and how showing and demonstrating how much students are actively mobilizing to support this event is really important.
So I have to ask you, because I ask every Palestinian when I first meet them, where are you from in Palestine?
My dad is from Al Khalil and my mom is from Al Quds, Jerusalem.
Oh, this is a very strong combination. I mean, for those who don't know about the cities, this is like very strong combination. Okay, so watch out for this. Watch out for Anais today and in the future. Okay, Professor Rabab, you are no stranger, as we all know, to attempts to silence your voice for speaking up for us. What has been some of the blowback that you guys have received about this event in particular?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that has been happening is that the Zionists as Anais said, a Zionist and right wing very vicious attack to malign, smear, and bully and intimidate both me, Professor Kinakawa, the students, as well as the voice of Layla Khalid. And I should just say, part of the reason for that is that, as I say many times, that look, Israel has been trying to crush the Palestinians for since 1948. The Zionist project has been trying to crush the Palestinians in order to create so-called a land without people for a people without a land. They failed. They failed. The Palestinians are still here. The Palestinians still exist, and the Palestinian narrative continues. However, in the United States, the Palestinian narrative is continuously challenged. There are always attempts to silence and shut it down, including the ways in which Palestinian women, Arab and Muslim women are portrayed. We see a lot of the ways Islamophobic, Orientalist, racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobic attacks against our communities to try to present Palestinians are not worthy of being supported as a cause, using a lot of this racist language against us. So one of the things is sort of like deflecting. One of the main discourses deflecting from what this webinar is all about and what we are trying to do. Who Layla Khalid is, what does she mean for generations of Arab, Palestinian, and third world actually, and Muslim women and people of color here in this country. And so she has actually, it's very interesting because in the process of organizing this webinar, so many people have been writing and saying, I named my daughter Layla. I was going to name my daughter Layla, except I had a son, so I didn't. There are so many people. Look, I mean, sometimes it does not talk about Muhammad Ali. His daughter is called Layla. One of the main strikers from San Francisco State of 1968. I met her at the 40th anniversary of the College of Ethnic Studies of the strike in 2008, and she comes to me and she says, "Are you the Palestinian sister?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I called my daughter Layla." And I'm like, wow. And this is actually Damira Ahmed, the late Damira Ahmed, Allah yarhamha. She passed away, but she was really huge in the Black Panther, in the strike, in the Black Student Union, and so on. And she's like, "You know about her?" I said, "Yes, I actually do have her autobiography. I teach parts of it. It's available on PDF." She said, "Please give it to me." And then I meet other people in the process. Actually, many people have been saying that because she inspires Palestinianness. And I'm not saying it's just women who are doing it, it's the whole society. But she also inspires defiance, standing up, speaking for herself, actually sacrificing and so on. And that is something that the Zionists do not want. They don't want us to speak for ourselves. So they try to come in with their money, with their connections, with their relationship with the Trump administration, with their right-wing agenda and so on, with their connection to white supremacy. They're really trying to silence, because they know the more people hear about Palestine, the more people will learn about Palestine, including from people like Layla Khalid, the more people are going to support Palestine. And so this country, there is a huge crisis for the Zionist movement, because despite all of that power, they are unable to convince people, even in the United States, which is the hardest place to organize, of the project to create injustice against the Palestinians. And we do know that there are more and more polls are coming out saying that there are more people who support Palestine. We know that many Jewish people support Palestine. We know that many Jewish kids and youth are supporting Palestine. So this is a huge crisis for the Zionist movement that wants to speak in the name of all Jews. We know that's not true. This is a huge problem for the Zionist movement that's unable to silence despite all their bullying and so on. So they're trying to come at us with everything, with all sorts of deflecting what it is, calling Layla Khalid a terrorist, trying to use the universe, the country, the U.S. very much anti-Palestinian, racist, Islamophobic, white supremacist. I mean, we've seen how they've been doing it against Black movement, against indigenous people, against brown people. It's not only against the Palestinian. So they're trying to use that. And they're also, on top of it, they're trying to exceptionalize Palestine. Say, oh, this is Palestine, is separate from everything else. So we say it's not exceptional. Justice in for Palestine is part of justice for all. And so they're having a very, so they're, I mean, I've seen, look, I've been subjected to these attacks like for the last 13 years. I mean, it was only maybe one semester, 1 year of honeymoon at the university when I was hired, and then they went back. They, as we say in Arabic, رجعت الحزينة لعادتها القديمة, same old. And so I've been subjected to that. I've been sued. We've had death threats. We have posters against us. We had all sorts of maligning and so on. We actually defeated them in the lawsuit. The problem is that one of the problems is that the Zionist groups are actually allying themselves with the administration of the university in a way that the university is not actually giving us the support we need in order for us to do what we have to do. But we're not defeated. We're resolute in what we're trying to do.
Yeah, you know, you said something important, which my Palestinian refugee dad always says, which is, you know, Palestine is not that unique. This has happened in other places. It's happened in other times in history, and making these connections are wildly important. You know, the uniqueness maybe of Palestine is that it's still happening. You know, it's. I always tell people, you don't need to read about apartheid and Jim Crow in history books. You can just go visit Palestine. It's the living museum of all this stuff. I mean, it's happening there. Anais, I want to come back to you for a second. How old are you?
I'm 20.
Okay, and you're did you grow up in America or did you grow up in the Arab world?
I grew up in America.
Okay, so you grew up in America. You're only 20 years old. You didn't need Professor Rabab, I assume, to tell you who Layla Khalid was. I mean, Layla, you know.
No, I knew about her growing up.
I want you to talk for a second about how there's certain things. I always try to tell this to people, and people don't understand. There's certain like names and things we grew up with, right? I mean, you know, Edward Said, Layla Khalid, this and that. I mean, what did Layla Khalid mean to you, even as a young woman, and now you're in college? What did that figure mean to you as you were growing up?
Yeah. So growing up, she was definitely a name that was forced to be reckoned with in the household. We all knew her name. We all knew her face. Everyone knows her face. Everyone knows the iconic images of her. It's just a very familiar feeling and interaction with her, even though we don't know her on a personal level, I feel. And I'm speaking in terms of Palestinians in the diaspora, and as well as Palestinians back home. I would assume everybody knows Layla. And so for me, as I grew up, and, you know, as I also developed as a woman, as a young woman, I also developed a different understanding of my identity as two parts. So Arab, Palestinian, and a woman. And so seeing an icon like that as someone to be revered, and, you know, to see her resilience and understand it on my own, and study her on my own. So not just what I know about her from when I was younger, from my parents or from my grandparents, you know, that's passed down generation by generation, but actually being able to interact on an intellectual level with, you know, her biography or articles written about her from many perspectives, you know, the ones that villainize her and, you know, vilify her, and then the ones that revere her and admire her. And, you know, they sort of, I wouldn't say, some people do idolize her, and some people would say, oh, don't idolize anyone. But I think that she has definitely demonstrated to me and to many other young Arab Palestinian women that a woman's place is in the fight for liberation, and that we must challenge these narratives that are imposed upon us by society, and that it's possible. So she's, yeah.
I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I think every Palestinian is raised with some of these images, right? Like, you know, Hamdallah, Layla Khalid, you know, these things just like are constant in our houses. If your parents are Palestinian, it just happens. And, you know, we have to fight back against the misinterpretation of these symbols all the time. But Professor Kinakawa, I mean, you know, I almost feel bad for you. You've been thrust into this world of of this. What is different? You know, you've worked on a lot of these things for a long time, a lot of these images for a long time, or a lot of these issues for a long time. What is different that you found when now you've jumped into the Palestinian sphere? Is it new? In other words, have you seen this kind of resistance or opposition from power with other issues that you've dealt with, or is it unique to the Palestinian issue? And before you answer that, let me say to the people watching, if you want to have questions or comments, please put them in the Facebook comments. I can see them and I can post them up on the screen and we can talk about them. But yeah, Professor Kinakawa, do you see something different about when you wade into these Palestinian waters? Is it different than things you've experienced before?
Sure. In terms of my experience in the university higher education, which like I started to teach in 2001, I have never ever experienced anything similar to this in my teaching career. And I have known Professor Abdul Hadi's work and then attacks on her for a long time. So I knew that like I had the knowledge of it. And so, but then when this happened, the minute we started to talk, the publicized the event, like it's almost like there's so like that force that try to to challenge not challenge, but to attack the kind of the history that we are trying to teach. That is just so that was unbelievable, and I feel like we are just doing what instructors do every day, every semester, every year, and it should be done much easily. We are doing that as a kind of normal part of our academic life, and then somehow the Zionist attacks make it such an work actually just to tell this story, this very important narrative of Leila Khaled, and that's that's just the basic that we historians do in any other context. But then there are so many obstacles that we have to go over to do this very simple, basic responsibility that we have as instructors. That's just incredible. And then, of course, like as scholar, we always say there are always differences and similarities. So I could connect this experience to some other experiences that I mentioned earlier, like my activism. But I think, yeah.
I assume you're also saying that, it's part of the academic's responsibility. Hey, making people uncomfortable that's okay. That's part of what we're supposed to do. I know in my classes that I teach, the job is to push people, make them a little, not make people feel offended, but definitely uncomfortable to talk about certain things. But Professor Rabab, come on. Yes. You had to know. You put Leila Khaled's picture on a flyer. Everything. All hell's gonna break loose. You knew that, but you did it anyway. Why? Why was it important for you that she especially would be a part of this event?
Okay. Let me just say, I wanted to actually add to what Anais said, that she grew up. I actually grew up also under Israeli occupation and under Jordanian rule. And under Israeli occupation, I was part of a group of generation that I wanted to grow up to be like Leila Khaled. I didn't really want to grow up to become a homemaker. I really wanted to be part of the struggle. I so admired her standing up and her speaking up for herself. I really admire
that. I wanted to grow up to be like Leila Khaled.
Everybody. The thing is that she was, and by the way, a lot of Palestinians. There is no agreement among Palestinians then or now whether, hijacking planes was the way to do it, was there the way. Actually, even people who were engaged in hijacking planes will come to you and say, actually, the struggle should be based on the grassroots in Palestine. And then they say this was a necessary thing, but people, if they were the mass movement that there is, that came on later on, they would have never had to do it, and so on. So there is the book is not there. I'm not saying either yes or no. But what I am interested as a scholar, I'm interested in narratives. I'm interested in critical knowledge. I am interested to actually have a conversation and find out, where are you at? What are you saying? I've read, it's not just only about Layla Khalid. We've actually had a lot of people come and speak in our webinars. We've had webinars on Black freedom and Black lives. We have webinars on indigeneity. We had webinars on abolition of the police. We had webinars on sexual and gender justice. We had a lot of webinars, as you say, that might make some group or another uncomfortable. But that's the role of the academic. That's the role of the public intellectual. We have to be able to produce knowledge for justice. We have to be able to open our classrooms to the community. We have to allow the students to be able to engage with larger issues, not to just feel that their own word is only limited by this smallness of the classroom in a provincial place that does not engage with the word. And I think in the US education in particular, there is a very serious problem because majority of the students are not taught what is happening here. People don't even know the history of this country. They do not know what's happening in different parts of the country. And they definitely are not taught about what's going on in the world, not because the kids themselves are not smart, but because the intentional curriculum is intentionally seeks to actually make people not know what's going on. Because if people don't know what's going on, they're not going to do anything about it. They're going to think that what's going on is business as usual. This is the status quo. And then when somebody like me, or somebody like Professor Kinakawa, or somebody like you, or a student like Anais, anybody actually raises these issues, we get labeled as controversial. We get labeled as controversial. But what is Layla Khalid doing, honestly? What has she done aside from what Nelson Mandela was involved in? What anybody from other liberation movements? I mean, Nelson Mandela until the 90s was considered a terrorist too, and then he was received in the White House. What does this mean? This means that whenever the balance of forces shifts, whenever politics shift, people change where they're at. Before George Floyd was killed on May 25th, a lot of the things that we see today, from toppling Confederacy statues, from actually changing the names of the streets, from basically challenging all of the stuff that's going on, what's coming up, holding the police accountable, calling for prison abolition and so on, was not part of the mainstream. It was, the whole thing about Black Lives Matter was not really part of the mainstream. So I think it's really important for us to take things in relative terms and to actually be mindful of history, because that's our job as scholars. So for me, one of the exciting things is, first of all, I do have a lot of admiration. I do have a lot of respect. And for me, growing up, Layla Khalid also, I've gotten to know her through my interviews, from my research, and so on. I've been, by the way, attacked before about organizing meetings and with many people, but then they also only picked up on Layla Khalid and Sheikh Ra'ad Salah, because this is what works for the Islamophobic war on terror discourses and so on. That's very convenient for the Zionists to do that. And they do it again and again and again. So we know the Islamophobia industry and the Israel lobby industry coincide with each other. But for me, it was really interesting to also have discussions, have people look, because what we did back, by the way, in April, when we did the webinar, we showed that film, Layla Khalid Hijacker, with a question mark. And we used it as a text. And we did a very critical reading of it. By the way, it's available on Ahmed Studies Facebook page, so anybody can go and watch it if they want to. And so we've done that, and we've used it as a text. And now it's a question to actually also have the discussion with Layla Khalid and also be able to engage in critical conversation. By the way, I've received so many questions from so many Zionists. A lot of Zionists also signed up on the webinar. Ahlan sahla. I would love to have more people come in, because I'd love people to learn. And I said, please bring your thick notepads, whether it's electronic or it's paper. Take notes, learn, ask questions, and so on. So we want people to engage in these conversations. And what the Zionists are trying to do is actually stunt and silence these conversations. So I think I am against silencing any voices. You don't have to agree or disagree. No speaker on campus comes to any classroom, even the material we teach. We don't necessarily agree with everything. You don't have to agree. It's not about agreement. It's about really pushing the mind, pushing the envelope, pushing the mind to think more, pushing the mind not to get lazy, pushing the person to be more critical, and so on. And that's precisely what the Zionists don't want. Because actually complete silence, treating us as sheep, treating students as sheep, treating us as academics, intellectuals, the public, and so on, because if people know, they may do something about it. So it's better not to let them know. And if we're not going to actually try to silence it in the public discourses, what we'll do the intimidation, we'll do bullying, we'll do smearing, we'll do the whole defamation and so on in order for us. And we actually will give the universities, like my university, we'll give them donations and so on, and we'll keep pressuring them. Our university president, by the way, received a letter from the director and the endowment director of the Jewish Community Federation, which is the largest federation in the Bay Area, that peddles millions of dollars to the likes of Amcha, Stand With Us, David Horowitz, Canary Mission, and so on. All of it, by the way, is available through their tax exempt. Sent it to her, said to her, I congratulate you, and so on the same day that she published an op-ed in the J Weekly, which is Zionist publication, actually condemning us and labeling me and Professor Kinakawa implicitly as evil, and really basically defaming us, and only moving out of her statement within the university against Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-blackness, and so on. And she only wrote in her J Weekly only that I'm talking to Jewish students, and the problem is she made the historical error, she's a historian, of considering all Jews Zionists, which we know this is a huge disservice to also our Jewish sisters and brothers who have been struggling even before the Zionist project against anti-Semitism, and even before Israel was founded, and will continue struggling after Zionism has passed, and after things have changed, and after the settler colonial racist project in Israel is defeated, or after all of this stuff. She's completely neglecting faculty, students, and community members, not only us, but also our Jewish sisters and brothers and everybody else who's part of the community for justice. So it's actually quite disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we deal with in America all the time, which is and you brought it up, the sort of misteaching of Americans. I mean, I always say in my comedy, we have two main problems, which is one is, we actually have a game show in America called Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader that nobody wins. I mean, like we have a problem in this country. And so imagine what it's like then to try to teach people about Palestine, which they are not only not taught about, but mistaught about, over decades. And then, Anais can attest to this since we both grew up in America, I think. I mean, they still teach us that, Columbus discovered America. I mean, this still happens.
Yeah, that needs
he got lost.
He got lost.
He wasn't even a good explorer. I mean, we have a holiday to this guy, and he wasn't even he got lost. He thought he got to India real quick. That's why they're called Indians. So, I mean, but we still learn these things as accomplishments and achievements in American history. Anais, let me come to you for a second. Again, I remember, not that much older than you, but I remember my days on college campuses as well. What can you report to all of us that is still happening at least on your campus, when it comes to trying to speak up about Palestine? I know when I was in college, in the 90s, our whole strategy as Palestinian students, because we didn't have any resources, they didn't give us an office, none of that kind of stuff. Our whole strategy was to go to Zionist events when they had a big speaker, and then wait till it was time to ask a question, and then we'd ask some challenging question, and then we'd get thrown out. Like, that was our whole strategy. And 4 years ago, I was at an event at the University of Michigan where they were bringing Omar Barghouti from BDS to talk, and we have 300 people in a room listening to him. And I saw a few students off in the corner that looked like they shouldn't be there. And then when it was time to ask questions, Zionist students got up and asked the tough questions, and they were sort of the counter protesters. And so we used to be the counter protesters. Now they are. But what are you seeing on your campus? Is that the case now, or are you still seeing the official channels try to push back on you? What is the state of affairs on college campuses when it comes to Palestine as you see it?
Yeah. So I would say I work widely within the larger community of college organizers for justice and for Palestine. And specifically on my campus, we've definitely experienced suppression of the Palestinian Students for Justice in Palestine organizations. We are an unconstituted organization at our campus, and that's because our organization, before I arrived on campus, was also shut down by administration. The rumor has it that there was some Zionist donors that complained about the organization, and they shut it down and just unconstituted it. So we are unconstituted, meaning we don't receive any funding from the university for our needs as student organizers, right? So to put on events, host lecturers, like any other student organization. So that really limits us as to what we can do. The event that we did in 2018, we brought Dr. Abdelhadi to campus, and we were very close to getting denied. We had to apply for additional funding from an outside resource that was still affiliated with the university. And we had Zionist pushback from students on campus, Campus Hillel members trying to crush our opportunities to fund the event and actually be able to pay Dr. Abdelhadi her honorarium fees and, put the event together. And it was a very simple event, and anything about Palestine, they feel threatened. And so are more well-established Students for Justice in Palestine chapters within college organizing, and they've really picked up momentum. And I feel like tactics and tactic building is becoming really important, and also looking to our elders and the mistakes of our elders and seeing where we can, diverge from that path and where we can, be sort of strategic about things is really helping people. So I think it's looking forward, and we are resilient, and we will continue to advocate for justice and for Palestine on continent.
But why do you think they feel threatened? I mean, this is what we call in the law a leading question. Why do you think they feel so threatened by just us having an event?
Because our existence is resistance. And so they are directly threatened by that. And when we're mobilizing, when we're getting and asking fellow organizations, right? So in the organizing community, it's mostly, so for example, the circles that are advocating for Palestine are also advocating for Black Lives Matter and for Native American rights and indigenous land rights. And so when we bring these constituents together in one space to teach about and make these connections more visible and more apparent, that's a threat, because solidarity to them is a threat. So when we're garnering all of this solidarity, they get scared. Obviously, they're gonna shake in their boots. It makes sense.
And I also think it seems like, at least when I was in college, they seemed, the Zionist organization and groups on campus, they seemed more equipped to have the debate, like they had gotten fed the lines. And I don't know if it's the same lines from 20 years ago, but it seems to me they're not as equipped anymore to have these debate. Like this is why they just don't want to have the debate. Talking about the substance is not good for them.
Exactly, because we've become more well-learned about the history. We know our stuff. We're reading the right things. We're, going to primary sources where, we have the truth on our side, right? We're fighting for justice. Fighting for justice isn't something that is a lie. It shouldn't be based on lies. And so that to them is a threat.
Yeah, I always say we sleep pretty well at night. I don't know how they do, but I feel like we sleep pretty well at night. Okay, Professor Kinakawa, I want to try to wrap this whole thing up in the next 5 minutes or so, but what are you expecting from this event tomorrow? I've shared, for people who are watching, I've shared the link to the event about 3 or 4 times, so please go ahead, join it, sign up for it tomorrow. But what are you expecting from the event tomorrow? What is your goal from the event tomorrow? What are you expecting from it? And do you expect the backlash to let up when the event's over?
Sure. What I expect from this event, well, I think this is a historical event, as like Dr. Abdelhadi already describes, that it's we are, I think, witnessing and participating in this incredible history by listening to Leila Khaled in person. And then we already talked about there are over 1,000 people who registered, and students in my classes, they learned a little bit about the history, like not much yet, but they are learning, and in many ways, like they are like they are actually offended by the fact that they happen to learn the history, and they also can connect the struggle of Palestine to their own struggles in their own communities too. And so I think the expectation and like is really high, and the like we are so ready to listen to her and also her comrades, like all of them such a like amazing the historical figures, like, so I think this is going to be really, really important event. And so yeah, I think and I hope, so that's what I
No, I think you answered my question. Professor Rabab, I mean, sort of the same sort of line of question to you. I mean, what are you hoping that people get out of this event tomorrow? And are you worried? I know you told me before this event that there was still even some last minute attempts to shut you guys down, right? You were talking about they were trying to get in touch with Zoom to not let you broadcast or something like that. I mean, what is happening in these last hours before the event?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm actually expecting a very lively debate. I'm expecting people who have questions, whether it's old, cliche, repetitive questions that sometimes we know how to even finish the sentences, or new questions, because there is a lot, our audience is very mixed. So we have students, we have faculty, we have Palestinians, we have Arabs, we have Muslims, we have Black people, we have people from all over the world. And no, you can't actually tell what kind of questions are going to come, but we know some of the issues that people have, and we really, what I'm expecting, what I'm hoping for is that this will also be able to clarify questions for people to understand. They don't have to agree, but at the end of the day, when the hour is finished, when the 3 hours actually are finished, then people will go around with better understanding, with more questions. So that's, for me, is one of the most exciting things that I think about that. Now, what's happening is, of course, the Zionists are really trying to pressure. Zoom is trying to pressure us and threatening to close down the event if we actually include Layla Khaled. They would like us to disinvite her, and we're not going to disinvite any of our guests. First of all, we know better than to be rude and disinvite our guests. Secondly, we believe that she has a lot of things to say and a very important contribution to make to the discussion around Palestine, around gender, around resistance, around narratives. There is a lot of issues. By the way, if people watch the film, Layla Khaled Hijacker, there is a lot of questions, and some of our students get offended, and women and gender studies in particular, when she's always asked about her looks. She's always about plastic surgeries. She's always about things like this. And she says, why are you asking me about this? But it's right. It's actually really interesting for students to be even to engage in those. But the Zionists really have tried to come hard because they want to silence a voice, a figure that has been historic, that people actually really want to attend and hear, regardless how they feel about the issue and so on. And so they are really trying to shut it down. But we believe that it is the responsibility of the university. The university has an obligation this to provide us with space for us to have. This is open classroom. This is a classroom. If the classroom, something happens to the classroom, if there are fires in California, if a water pipe breaks down, if the heat breaks down, if the internet doesn't work in a particular classroom, the university has an obligation to provide us with another venue in order for us to do that. So we're holding the university accountable. It is not sufficient for the university to say we uphold academic freedom or freedom of speech when they are reproducing the Zionist discourse that condemns us and vilifies us, number one. Secondly, it's not enough to say we're okay with your right to do it, but we're not going to do anything if you are going to be shut down or attacked or whatever. We're holding the university seriously accountable to providing us with the venue we need in order for us to continue with this classroom the way we had intended it to be. Whether they like it or they don't like it, they could always come up and ask any questions they have. And they're more than welcome. Every single person, from the chancellor down, they're more than welcome. All the Zionists are more than welcome to come and ask questions and, post them and so on. Even people send me questions. I said, just bring them to the webinar. Just bring them to webinar and ask the questions, because we know some of these questions are typical. They're going to be asked. But we expect the university to uphold our right to have this open classroom. We expect the university to uphold the right of the students to be able to attend these classes. They have already been waiting for them. They have already been very excited about it. We expect the university to respect the right of the public to attend. This is a public university. It has an obligation towards the public to provide information, to provide education, to provide critical knowledge, and not to engage in silencing us or censoring us or penalizing us for engaging in views that may not be popular in certain right-wing Zionist or white supremacist circles. A lot of the things are not popular. So we expect the university to hold that, and we expect to have a very exciting webinar and to learn so much more, and for it to be talked about so much afterwards, and to host other people in our future classes.
Wonderful. Well, listen, I do have one caller who called in, Pally Ryder. Hopefully you're there with me, man. Come on. Let me try to get you in here, see if it works. I love bringing people who are listening in. So let's see. Pally Ryder, can you hear me? Oh, I can barely hear you. We can barely hear you, unfortunately. I don't know why the mic's not working, but maybe if you speak up loudly. No, we can't. We can't hear him.
Maybe you can post your question in the chat.
Yeah, Pally Ryder, for some reason we can't hear you. The mic is not working. I know we tried this before. So maybe you can fix the input thing on your mic and it can work. But if you want to post your question in the chat, but it looks like we're going to run out of time. But Anais, I'm going to kind of let you close it. Professor Rabab sort of told us what she expects from this event, what she wants, and Professor Kinakawa as well. But as a student and someone who is, on the campuses fighting these fights every day, what do you want to take from this event to bring back to campus and to keep the activism going there?
I'm expecting to take away, first and foremost, the resilience of Leila Khaled and her unwillingness to compromise and to, bow down to these Zionist attacks that have been coming after her, year after year. And so the resilience is the biggest thing. I'm excited to also engage in discussion, right? So this is about asking hard questions and challenging the narratives and seeing how Leila Khaled is going to support that endeavor. But also, I think to bring back to campus is this, willingness to use and learn new techniques to challenge these dominant narratives of how we talk about Palestine. And so I think that we could all learn a thing or two from Leila. And so, yeah, who's afraid of the truth is the real question, and that's why we're being silenced on this. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and look, somebody in the comments earlier was writing something about the Canary Mission. I think me and Professor Abdelhadi are veterans of Canary Mission. In fact, Professor, whenever I get invited to like an event to go do comedy or speak, and someone asks me to send them my bio, I just send them my Canary Mission link. It's the best bio anyone has ever done on me before. It's like, so in depth. And so, Anais and other people, it might happen to you one day too. It's a badge of honor. Don't worry about it. These guys I always think of it like this. Professor Kinakawa, you're getting a Canary Mission profile too. But I always say, these guys do I want to sort of close on what Professor Rabab is saying. The Zionists are in crisis mode. They don't know what to do anymore. They are just throwing everything at the wall, right? Canary Mission, silencing us. It just hasn't worked. They've only sought for 72 years our complete disappearance and silence. And you got to feel bad for them. It's just not working out for them. I mean, it's just not working.
Well, they're lashing out. They're lashing out. They are lashing out. They are really attacking and so on. And I should just say the reason they're doing all of this is because they have a lot of resources. It is an industry. They have a lot of resources. I want to just say something about the Canary Mission. A lot of the stuff, there is a lot of information because they have the money and the resource to do it. but a lot of it is also inaccurate. The smearing, the vilification, and so on is actually quite damaging, and it's the intent to do character assassination and to ruin people's reputation, which is the same thing that McCarthyism has done in the 50s. This is what they're really trying to do in order for them to punish us, to threaten us with silencing, so we would just go away. The problem, I really think the problem for the Zionists is that we're not going away. Palestinians are not going away. Black liberation is not going to go away. But the Comfort Women Justice Coalition is not going to go away. Any of the justice issues are just getting stronger. The stronger we get, the more the bullies become bullier, because bullies never get the message to just stop. They lash out and they get nastier. But we're here, we're resilient, we're going to continue doing what we think we need to do, and so on. And, we'd hope that maybe someday they will learn and they become good students. We hope that
Well,
this
we
is
hope.
the case.
Yeah, but we're not going anywhere. All right, let me show this flyer one more time here. You see tomorrow, Whose Narratives, Gender Justice and Resistance, a conversation with Layla Khalid, sponsored by the Arab and Muslim Ethnicities and Diaspora Studies program at San Francisco State University, which, of course, one of our icons, Professor Abdul Hadi, heads up out there. Professor Abdul Hadi, Professor Kinakawa, Anais, thank you so much for your time tonight, educating everybody out there a little bit. I've left the link many times for people to join the event tomorrow in the comments, but stay strong. I love you all. I'm proud of you all, and hopefully I'll see you all very soon.
Thank you so much, Amir, for having us.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, everybody, one more time, please join that event tomorrow. I know I will be there. Make sure you are there supporting Professor Abdul Hadi, Professor Kinakawa, and Anais, and everything that they're trying to do to keep our narratives alive and to make sure Palestinian voices and all voices that stand with solidarity and justice are always heard. Please share this Facebook Live event if you can. It'll be here for anyone to watch it after we're done. And please, please keep talking about Palestine, even if it's a little bit, every single day. All right. I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.